So hey guys, it's Trey and here. I got with me,
Will Farah.
and Will, I'd like to ask you a few questions. One being, what's your age?
Good. I'm 63 years old.
And I'm going to ask you some questions about how agriculture has changed and what it was like when you were a kid.
Sure, absolutely. Well, some parts of agriculture are the same as they've always been, but a lot of consumer expectations have changed. There's a lot more emphasis on no genetic modifications. A lot of consumers are demanding, no antibiotic beef, things like that, where it's, more natural. Growing up, we ate grass-fed beef, and everybody else you always wanted to eat corn-fed beef. And now a lot of consumers want the grass-fed beef. They want the natural products as opposed to the fed out, type beef. And so a lot of changes in agriculture have come about by consumer expectations and what consumers are demanding, and the ranchers and the farmers that are meeting those desires are more profitable than the ones that aren't.
Another thing is, what was education like when you were a kid?
Education was pretty basic, reading, writing, arithmetic, and really, basic courses. Now you have a lot more options as far as getting exposure to, robotics, computing, mechanized agriculture, a little, I would say more finite areas of interest, things that apply to just a specific area as opposed to generalities. And education now, I believe, gives you more exposure to a specific area that you might want to have a job or own a business in. Whereas and when I was in school, you learned the basics, and then when you went out in your career, you kind of learned what you wanted to do, and then specialized really through kind of on-the-job training as opposed to education.
And what was the plumbing like in your house? Y'all like running water, or how was that?
We did. We had, all of the, modern conveniences. I will say that things like hot water heaters had smaller capacity, so we took a lot of quick showers, especially in the wintertime. And we had to be very careful during the winter months when freezing weather was coming to properly wrap faucets, and really we had to drain water pipes and drain them completely, or they would freeze and break. And now with modern products like PEX and other things, the freeze proofing isn't as critical as it used to be. But we routinely, had our brass faucets would split due to freeze expansion, and we replaced faucets, multiple times a year, and even for livestock with float valves on livestock tanks, those routinely busted. And now the modern technology with the modern products makes it much more convenient.
And like food, was it scarce, hard to get, or how was that?
It wasn't really scarce, but the places that you could buy it were not as convenient as they are now. We grew some of our own vegetables, and of course grew our own beef. The beef you had to get processed and then put in a freezer, and then you had it available to use. And then and we did canning and preserving of different vegetables that we grew during the summer. And of course now it's very easy to go to the grocery store, buy fresh produce, canned vegetables. And so the food was not scarce, but it wasn't as convenient for you as a consumer. If you decided you needed some green beans, the store, wasn't right down the road from you. You might have to drive a ways, to get to it, and it was expensive.
Yeah, so you couldn't like drive down to the convenience store and get some beans.
No, absolutely not. There were no C-stores back then.
And what about like agriculture equipment, like plows, discs, and tractors?
Right. A lot of that equipment really does the same function today that it did, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. And we always on the farm typically had older equipment, used equipment, and I even now have tractors that are 50 years old, and they don't have a fancy cab, no air conditioning, no Wi-Fi,
But they still work.
They still work. They still do the exact same function that they're intended for. And for commercial farming, a very, very large operation, it makes sense to have larger tractors with the newer technology. But for most farmers and ranchers, you can have a 50-year-old tractor and it works just as well as a brand new one for a lot less money.
And what was the technology back then like?
Well, there wasn't a lot of technology. It was really just internal combustion engines. You had diesel or gasoline, mostly diesel. Some of them were converted to run on propane, but they were very easy to work on. Anyone could work on them. Now with a lot of the modern technology, if the tractor won't start, you've got to have somebody come out with a computer to plug into it to find out what the fault code is, to find out what sensor isn't working, and so forth.
So like there wasn't very many factories like with the metal industry, like it was more blacksmithing back then, or what was that like?
Yeah, the earlier things were handmade in shops with blacksmithing, and with the I guess the increase in imports from overseas, you bring in more things that are manufactured and built in factories. And now most equipment that you get, even if it's made domestically, is built in a factory and it's not handmade. You have people putting things together, but most of it's machine made now.
And made in bulk.
Made in bulk for being able to sell and replicate. And of course that's how implement companies make their money, is having one design and selling multiple copies of it as opposed to hand making each one.
And one last thing, would you rather live in today's world, or would you rather live back when you were a kid?
I think from a convenience standpoint, today is much more convenient. You can, if you have a tractor that's broken, or a stock tank that won't fill up, or a well, the pump goes down, you can quickly go get the part and get right back into action. So from a convenience standpoint, I think today is much better. From just the simplicity of life and the slower pace, 50 years ago is much preferable.
Alright guys, that's it. That's all I got for today.